Roman Abramovich may no longer be at the club, but that has not stopped them from being ruthless with their managers. 100 days into Todd Boehly's regime, he has decided enough is enough after Chelsea's loss to Dinamo Zagreb in the Champions League and has ended Tomas Tuchel's reign as gaffer.
It's time to go!
Several managers have been linked with the vacancy at Stamford Bridge, so using the power of Football Manager, I will be appointing some of the favourites as the Chelsea boss, simulating a season to see who is the best candidate to take over at Chelsea. Before we kick off the simulations, let me know down in that comments section who you think is best suited to be Chelsea manager, and we are going to kick things off with our first manager, the current favourite to be the Chelsea boss, Graham Potter. So guys, after appointing Graham Potter as the manager of Chelsea using the power of the in-game editor with Football Manager 2022, you can see he has done pretty darn well throughout the course of the season. Now, don't get me wrong, he's not taking over after Thomas Tuchel's games. I'm just simulating a full season on a current updated database. This is the up-to-date transfers. You've got @Aubameyang and all, Fofana and all of that at Chelsea. So this is as realistic as I can possibly get it. And Chelsea finished in third in the Premier League with Kai Havertz scoring 17 goals. Liverpool go on to win the title, but all in all, I actually think of relatively solid season. They're 11 points ahead of Tottenham in the table, which again is pretty solid. Let's have a look in terms of some of the other competitions to see how they get on. First of all, let's have a look at that schedule. So they were in Group H in the Champions League, which obviously, again, this is all done in FM, so this isn't realistic. But they've got Inter, Stuttgart and Ajax, so they did pretty well there. Looks like they've powered through some of these cup competitions, knocked out in the quarterfinals of the Carabao Cup at the hands of Steven Gerrard's Aston Villa. They've powered through in the Champions League, though, unfortunately getting knocked out in the Champions League quarterfinals by PSG, and it looks like they were dumped out of the FA Cup at the hands of Fulham in the 4th round stage. So not overly impressive in terms of some of the cup competitions, but the league form pretty solid nonetheless. If we take a look at their transfer history, 2 players were purchased by Graham Potter: Luis Felipe, yet another centre-back, and Angel Di Maria on a free transfer, which is a very interesting one. In terms of the tactics, you kind of know what you're expecting in terms of Graham Potter: a 4-2-3-1. We've got Mendy, Reece James, Luis Felipe, Fofana, Chilwell, Kante alongside Chalobah, Di Maria, Kai Havertz playing as a 10 here, and Raheem Sterling. Obviously, there are players knocking about as well, the likes of Borja, the likes of Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, who can play in that particular position. But with the likes of Kai Havertz getting 14 goals throughout the course of the season, you kind of, Kai Havertz getting 24 throughout the course of the season, 18 for Raheem Sterling and 14 for Mason Mount, 28 for Lukaku, who is obviously out on loan to Inter Milan. But we won't talk about Lukaku. But ultimately, Graham Potter looks like he's had a very good spell as manager. If we go into their manager history, you can take a look at some of the stats for Mr. Graham Potter here. He's been in charge throughout the course of the season, and throughout the course of that season, he has a 62% win ratio with Chelsea. Let's move on to candidate number 2. So the second candidate for the job is Mauricio Pochettino, obviously the former Spurs and PSG manager. Now, this one will ruffle some feathers if he were to opt to go to Stamford Bridge, if he were given the choice. I know that they are in talks with Graham Potter at the time of recording this video, but if Poch were to go to Stamford Bridge, again, that would ruffle some feathers. In this simulation, however, things did not go his way, and he was sacked after just 161 days in charge of Chelsea. Now, ultimately, they did finish the season in 7th, but obviously we're not going to attribute all of this to Pochettino. He had 13 victories, 6 draws and 9 losses during the course of his tenure at Chelsea. 46% win ratio, not good enough for Todd Boehly in this particular instance. If we go into the schedule, he lost his job on the 14th of January, which coincidentally was after a 2-0 loss away to Tottenham. Heung-min Son and Lucas Moura getting the goals there. We will take a look at the transfer history for Poch to see if he did sign anybody. Not a bird, not a player, nothing for Poch, and ultimately a disappointing season. They were knocked out at the quarter-final stage of the Carabao Cup by Manchester City just before that loss. They had an okay showing in the Champions League group stages, but did finish second in that group. not necessarily the most difficult of groups. So not a great spell at the helm for Poch. Let's move in to number 3, who actually does have a little bit of Champions League pedigree about them. Manager number 3 in this simulation is Zinedine Zidane. Now, obviously, Zizou, the former Real Madrid manager, has won the Champions League on multiple occasions, so obviously he is going to be the type of superstar name that is going to be linked with this job. However, simulations again not going very well for Zizou, because he was actually sacked on the exact same date as Mr. Pochettino. Now, they did have a slightly worse record. He had a 44% win ratio, winning 12 games, drawing 5 and losing 10, but they were sacked on exactly the same day. So of course that was again at the hands of Spurs, who did in this instance beat Chelsea 3-2. Moura, Kane, Perisic with the goals, Havertz and Raheem Sterling with the goals for Chelsea in this instance. A few less than desirable results, I would say. The Champions League group stage in this instance, they had Roma, Marseille and Genk finishing second again behind Jose Mourinho's Roma, and not having a great time in some of the cup competitions as well. Knocked out in the 4th round of the Carabao Cup at the hands of Everton, with back-to-back losses to Everton there. Not great losing to them at the Bridge, especially with this current transfer update. And then in the FA Cup 3rd round, lost to Man City, but that's no disgrace. That's no disgrace. In terms of the transfers, did Zizou sign somebody? Yes, he did. He signed 𝘼𝙗𝙤𝙪 for that midfield for £9.25 million. Not the end of the world. He also sold Marc Cucurella, obviously a guy that they brought in the summer, out the door in the January on the way to Southampton. Again, that's going to set a few alarm bells ringing, being a former Brighton player. So we've had Graham Potter finish it up in 3rd. We've had Poch and Zizou both sacked. Let's move on to a man who's got a little bit more Premier League caliber, shall we say. So manager number 4 is Brendan Rodgers, and I can't actually believe I'm saying this, because currently Leicester City are absolutely horrendous in the Premier League. I'm sorry if this is going to cause offence to any Leicester City fans, but I've appointed Brendan Rodgers as the manager of Chelsea. He's obviously been there as a reserve manager and under-18s manager before taking his full-time job as a manager in a few different clubs, obviously Watford, Reading, Swansea, Liverpool, Celtic, Leicester, and then obviously now we've put him back at Chelsea as the full-time manager. I can't believe what's happened. Brendan Rodgers has taken over at Chelsea and guided them to a Premier League title. Now, let me know down in the comments if you think that in itself is possible. But Chelsea win the Premier League with 87 points, 26 victories, 9 draws and just 3 defeats. They lost to all away Man City, Spurs and West Ham. Kai Havertz scores 30 in the Premier League and is the Premier League top goal scorer, wins that Golden Boot, which is absolutely ludicrous. So if we go on Chelsea and take a look at, initially let's look at the transfers that he's done. Also signed Luis Felipe. Very, very interesting to see that happen. Also has not sold Cucurella in this particular instance. So if we take a look at Brendan's tactics, it is again a 4-2-3-1. You can kind of see how they are shaping up here. Mendy, Reece James, Fofana, Chalobah, Chilwell, Jorginho alongside Gallagher, Sterling, Mount, Hudson-Odoi and Kai Havertz playing as that striker. Several goals throughout the team, obviously. Raheem Sterling scores 24, Mason Mount 15, 10 for Hudson-Odoi and 41 for Kai Havertz in all competitions. 41 goals and 11 assists for Kai Havertz, absolutely tearing up every single competition. So let's have a look at Brendan's managerial record. If we go and take a look, guys, he's won a treble. The least likely manager to succeed potentially in this simulation setup is Brendan Rodgers, and he's only gone and won a treble. Premier League champions, Emirates FA Cup winners, Carabao Cup winners. They beat Spurs in the final at Wembley for the FA Cup, and they also beat Manchester United in the final at Wembley for the Carabao Cup. Absolutely dominant stuff. Brendan Rodgers has a 75% win ratio as well, winning 46 games throughout the course of the season. I'm stunned, absolutely stunned, but we've got one more gaffer ready to run the gauntlet. So the final manager in these simulations is a little bit of a laugh, but I would be very intrigued to see how he would do if he were given the nod at Chelsea. We are testing out Sean Dyche. Now, obviously, he currently does not have a job either and looks pretty darn good in terms of his in-game attributes. We put him in charge of Chelsea and he somehow managed to last the whole season, finishing 6th in the Premier League. So Sean Dyche has actually done pretty well. Not necessarily great in terms of the Premier League, but he's done pretty well to keep his job, in my opinion. 67 points for him. They finished a few points behind West Ham, who qualify for the Champions League. In this simulation, Liverpool win the title. Kai Havertz is the team's main goal threat, scoring 21 goals in that Premier League. So things must have gone pretty well for him in cup competitions if he's managed to keep his job. He was in Group C for the Champions League, where they finished top ahead of Inter and Real Madrid and Celtics. That's a very, very good group there. So he's done pretty well there. He looks like he's powered through some of these trophies. Got into the final, actually, of the Carabao Cup, losing on penalties to Arsenal at Wembley. Looks like the progression in the Champions League, again, has been pretty solid. Got all the way through to the semi-finals, where unfortunately they were defeated by Roma. Jose Mourinho's Roma going through 3-2 on aggregate, where they would have faced Bayern Munich in that final, which is absolutely crazy. But Sean Dyche actually doing pretty darn well. If we go on and take a look at the transfers that Mr. Dyche has made, first and foremost, Angel Di Maria, again, picked up as a free transfer. He's also signed Bobby Firmino from Liverpool for £29.5 million. He also signed Pedro Porro from Sporting, obviously the former Manchester City defender, for 38 million quid. I don't see why you would do that when you have Reece James, but that's what he's done. Let's take a look at the tactic that he was playing. Of course, the Sean Dyche 4-4-2. Interesting setup here. Mendy, Aspi, Chalobah, Thiago Silva, Chilwell, Sterling, Kante, Ziyech, Pulisic, Roberto Firmino, and then Kai Havertz up top. Am I being silly? Where's Reece James? Did they sell Reece James? Oh no, he's on the bench in this situation. He did score 1 goal. 31 goals in all competitions again for Kai Havertz. Looks like he is the main goal threat, and Chelsea fans will be relishing him playing in this particular simulation because he's scoring just so many goals. I hope that can transfer into real life. So guys, just as a summary of this, these are the 5 managers that we have had on this simulation and how they've got on. Graham Potter was the first one, the current Brighton manager. He did not get sacked in his simulations. He finished in 3rd in the Premier League with 80 total points and a win ratio of 62% after his 53 games in charge. Manager number 2 is Mr. Mauricio Pochettino, who was sacked in January after 161 days in charge, losing the job, ironically, after a defeat to Tottenham. 46% win ratio for Poch after 28 games in charge is not too great, but not the worst record on these simulations. Manager number 3, Champions League pedigree, Zinedine Zidane. He was sacked on the same day as Poch, which is very, very weird. Spurs obviously being the killer of contracts and managers at Chelsea. 44% win ratio for Zizou after his 28 games in charge. The 4th manager that we ran in the simulation is current Leicester boss Brendan Rodgers. Now, Rodgers' boy showed immense character and only gone and won the bloody league with 87 points. Kai Havertz popping off for 30 goals in the Premier League is a highlight there. He did also win a domestic treble with that amazing 75% win ratio, the highest out of the 5 managers. Last but by no means least, we have Sean Dyche, who somehow managed to keep his job despite finishing 6th in the Premier League with 67 points. They did lose the Carabao Cup final to Arsenal and should have got past Roma in the Champions League semi-finals. Sean Dyche finished his simulation with a 51% win ratio, which actually isn't too bad for a team not set up to play 4-4-2. So guys, we've run our 5 simulations on 5 of the managerial prospects who could take over at Stamford Bridge. Let me know down in the comments who you think is best suited to being that Chelsea manager. And if you like these sorts of experiments on FM22, take a look at this video, which is where we did the exact same thing for Manchester United and Erik ten Hag.